And of course, this live stream is all about things going on in American culture this week, which sadly will tie into some politics. And I don't want to get into the politics too quickly because, well, people have very strong opinions on all sides, and a lot of people can't talk about politics without flinging insults at each other, unfortunately. Oh, hi, Henry. Nice to see you're the leaderboard champion. Fantastic. Nice to have you here as well. And so, one thing I wanted to mention about the goings on in culture this week is we've had two holidays this week. Tuesday was the Transgender Day of Visibility. Um, and then Wednesday, of course, was April Fool's Day. And so there we go. But before getting back to those, I like to mention a couple of, well, that this channel has now been on the air for 2 years, on YouTube anyway, for 2 years. And so that makes 2 years of language culture and Dr. Lou, and I'm super happy that I'm still plugging at it, and I've had so much fun making over 200 videos so far. Um, and although I'm not doing this for any money because the channel is not monetized, and that's really not why I started the channel in the first place, to make money. Unlike a lot of YouTube creators, I'm just sort of here to spread the word about things related to language and culture. And there you go. And that's what, and knowing that YouTube showed me that my channel hit the 2 year milestone, um, this was um, well, a big wake up to me to say, hey, I still haven't done. It's been 2 years and I've never put out a short. Shorts are pretty popular on YouTube, so I gave it a whirl this week, just with a little message of say happy Transgender Visibility Day, and that's my own little way of trying to spread the word for anybody who doesn't know yet. Hi, Alan, how's it going? Hi, nice to see you here. And anyway, and so that was one thing I did. Made my first short, and it got a lot of views. So I'm thinking I will certainly make some more. And also, I'm only late to the game as far as live streaming is concerned, of course. I didn't do my first live stream until about 4 months ago, so most of this channel's 2 years were just uploaded videos and live premieres and stuff like that. But yeah, so I wanted to try making a short. It worked out well, so I will certainly do some more. In addition to long content videos, I'll make some more shorts. And that brings me to um, the other one of the holidays that happened this week, of course, April Fool's Day. And when I think about April Fool's Day, the first thing I have to wonder is it a good thing or a bad thing that we have one day a year, April 1st, in plenty of countries, not all, but plenty, where all of a sudden it becomes socially acceptable to outright, well, lie to people, deceive them in purpose of tricking them, with the purpose of tricking them or playing pranks on them. Only, only to pretty much mock them and make fun of them, label them as a fool. So some people would say that's a really good thing because it's all in good fun, and so why not for once a year? Other people might have the opinion that it's a terrible thing because it should never be really acceptable to go ahead and poke fun at somebody, make your own fun at somebody else's expense, and that's true. I'm kind of down on that, but I don't know. That's a thought. Uh, yeah, okay. Talking about some holidays first, and then sorry, I'm just answering a question from the chat. I'm first talking about some holidays, and then we'll get into other cultural things going on, because I've already discussed the second anniversary of my channel. So let's get back into it. April Fool's Day, of course. Um, yeah, I can see why some people think it's a good thing, others think it's a bad thing, because it's not nice to make fun of people and to trick them. But then again, just for fun, once a year, hey, why not? And and that brought me to wondering, okay, what are the exact origins of April Fool's Day? Where does it come from? And so I looked into it. I did a little research on the history of um, where and when April Fool's Day is celebrated and where it came from. And I came up with, well, I noticed there's a couple theories around. There's one theory that I think is adorable, I guess. It's plenty good, but not very historically sound. A lot of people say April Fool's Day is linked to pretty much the vernal equinox, which is, the end of winter and then first day of spring, the vernal equinox, which happens pretty much every year right before April 1st. It happens kind of around then, though, in the northern hemisphere anyway. And the idea is that Mother Nature fools people with changing, unpredictable weather. And I think that theory is kind of adorable. And yeah, why not? Why not just leave it at that? So if that's your belief, that's fine by me. But I looked into it further, and some historians actually connected April Fool's Day to a festival called Hilaria in ancient Rome. Hilaria, Hilaria, which is Latin for joy. And so, what that festival was all about is people would put on disguises. They would put on disguises, and they would mock their fellow citizens and some magistrates and everything. And that's a decent theory too, because it said that festival was said to be inspired by the Egyptian legend of Isis, Osiris, and Seth. That's cool too, but that one, I'm not really buying that theory fully either, because that means April Fool's Day, like things, would have popped up back in ancient Rome, then died out for like a millennium at least before they popped back in as April Fool's Day. So I don't really place a lot of stock in that theory. So the best historical reasons I could come up with, the best things I found, involve April Fool's Day going all the way back to France, more than 440 years ago. So I'm talking France in 1852. Um, and that's when France switched from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar, which is the one that we go by these days, right? Because in the Julian calendar, the new year came on April 1st, and and that's actually much like the Hindu calendar, where it starts about April 1st, and where the new year starts about April 1st. And so the people still stuck on the Julian calendar, who I guess hadn't gotten the memo that we're switching over to the Gregorian calendar, I think they were the first people being referred to and looked at as April Fools. Um, because, of course, the day of the new year had moved 3 months earlier to January 1st by that time. And that brought to mind, these so called April Fools were the subjects and the butt of jokes. And so they're referred to as April Fools. And that to me brought to mind what is celebrated in France, how they do celebrate it in France is and have for a long time is uh, there's an expression poisson d'avril, which means April fish. So one of the jokes you can do, one of the pranks you can do to people is you tape a paper fish on their back, a fish made out of paper, not a real fish, of course, and um, and that's referred to as the poisson d'avril, and that fish symbolizes a young, easily caught fish and a gullible human. So that's funny to me. That people would be called April Fish, or at least the fish on the back. And that's why there's that picture in the thumbnail for this live stream about the little girl with putting the fish on the man's back and all that. Anyway, so again, that goes back to 1582 when France switched over from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar, because those who didn't get the memo that New Year's Day was January 1st now, and they would still celebrate the new year during the last week of March and up through April 1st. They were the first April Fools ever, as far as I can tell. So I think that's the best. That's the best explanation historically for that, anyway. And so, one thing that did happen on April 1st of this year, which was totally unrelated to April Fool's Day, was how Donald Trump addressed the nation on Wednesday evening, on April 1st in the evening, about the war in Iran. And so that's not such a fun thing. That's why I wanted to get the April Fool's Day stuff in first before I get to heavier things. And that's one thing culturally and politically going on. It seems like the Iran war, it seems like all the polling shows that American citizens don't want to be in this war for the most part. I'm talking a vast majority, but not everybody. And Israeli citizens don't want to be in this war, the vast majority, and Iranian citizens don't want to be in this war, vast majority to them. So that's interesting because our governments are at it anyway. And so, what did Trump say? To me, part of it, the most surprising part of it, is how short his address was. It was only like 17, 18 minutes, something like that. And it's really funny that he did it that quickly, because I'm so not used to him being so brief, But it was later in the evening, and he's doing shorter things and less events later in the evenings these days, I've noticed. And what else I noticed is that it doesn't look like he was going off the cuff and switching topics all the time, what like we're used to from him, which means I think he was pretty much reading off a teleprompter the whole time, pretty sure. But it went across pretty well. And he did say, I guess, one important thing is that he expects it to be very short. He said 2 to 3 weeks, in the next 2 to 3 weeks or whatever, which that makes me worry, because he seems to say that for a lot of things. A lot of things will happen in 2 weeks or 2 or 3 weeks by him. But anyway, and so that's one thing I noticed. He was totally urging Americans to believe or to know that this war is going to not be a lengthy one, because everybody's sick of the U.S. being in wars that seem to last forever, right? Even Americans, possibly even especially Americans. And he, but he did a lot of this through just saying how eviscerated Iran is. And literally, I have lots of notes here because I have some quotes, especially. I don't want them to get wrong in any way. And so when he was um, telling us that it's not going to be a lengthy war. He said, as one reason, that, talking about Iran, the country has been eviscerated. And he also said, then, quote, it is no longer a threat. And he also said, I like this quote, he said, they were a bully in the Middle East, and they're the bully no longer. So that's, I guess, a little of Trump patting himself on the back and patting America on the back for it. And I'm glad that he's at least seeing the political advantage to not wanting a big long war, right? So that's good. And it's also promising that he never said that there would be that the U.S. would put boots on the ground during that address. So nobody wants the kids going to war like this, and so that's good to hear. Well, that's good not to hear that anyway. And of course, like I said, he did a lot of patting himself and the U.S. military and the U.S. on the back, saying things like, and here we go, and I quote, we're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages where they belong. Again, he was referring to Iran when he said that. And he also said something that made me worry a little bit when he said, we're going to hit them extremely hard over the next 2-3 weeks. And he said, and I quote, if there's no deal, we're going to hit each and every one of their electric generating plants very hard. That makes me kind of worried because I think unless he was talking about just plants that are generating electricity for the military alone, then he's talking about damaging their civilian infrastructure, which I think there might be a war crime involved there. No expert on the laws surrounding war, but I'm pretty sure I've heard there's a war crime against going after civilian infrastructure. So hope he wasn't talking about that anyway. And at one point he said, it next it will be the bridges, then it will be the power plants, pretty much. And again, the overall theme was this war is not going to last very long, although not so many people really believe him on that. But hey, at least that's the direction. That's how he's pitching it anyway. And one thing I thought was funny when he was talking about the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, um, when he was talking about that, for one, he said, well, first thing you guys can do, first thing, and this is not a direct quote, I'm paraphrasing, buy oil from the US. We have plenty of it, right? And that makes it sound pretty self serving, huh? That we're, oh, yeah, sorry for screwing everything up with this war, but hey, buy some of our oil. We've got plenty to sell. And then he said, go to the street and take it. And that's a quote, take it. And then he said, protect it. And then he said, the hard part is done. Uh, this should be easy again because Iran is decimated, according to him. And it's kind of funny. I remember him talking about how they don't have very good any much more of a defense against aircrafts anymore. When within the last day or two, we've had a couple of fighter jets shot down over Iran, a couple of American planes shot down. So that tells me maybe their anti-aircraft technology is not as dismantled as he's pushing it to be. But anyway, so I don't want to spend really any more time on the war in Iran. I saved that for after the April Fool's Day stuff again because I wanted this to be a little more lighthearted. And anyway, Yeah, thank you so much. I'm brainwashed. You don't really have to be here if you don't want to. Feel free to leave. That's fine by me. Anyway, again, you must have missed the part in earlier in the chat where I said earlier where I said please no insults. Anyway, and um, anyway, and so let's get over the damn stuff about the war. Well, let's move off that topic because again, I don't like sticking to too many super political things because again, like I said, people can't seem to talk politics without flinging insults at each other, which I think is sad because um, that really breaks down all like yeah, that pretty much dismisses any benefit that can be made from debate and trying to learn something about what each other have to say. Anyway, um, so getting to something else again, that's not the war. Um, the other holiday that happened this week, but before that, just one thing, one small political thing. One thing that a lot of people are buzzing about this week is how Pam Bondi got fired as the Attorney General of the U.S. And a lot of people, especially on the left, are really celebrating that, right? And and a lot of people were speculating that this is over her mishandling of the whole Epstein files thing and whatnot, which is somewhat possible, but I think that's just speculation, you know. And uh, thank you, Henry. Very good. Good to know that you can have reasonable conversations, respectful conversations about politics. So that's good to know. I'm glad to hear that. And it's nice to see that you're back to number one in the leaderboard. Please do keep it going so you can stay there. Anyway, so Pam Bondi was fired as Attorney General, and this is following the recent firing of Kristi Noem as the Director of Homeland Security. And so I wonder if Donald Trump is gearing up to start firing more people, a lot like he did during his first term. That makes me wonder because I've been surprised about how few people he has let go from the executive branch during his second term so far as compared to the first one. But yeah, and when somebody is let go, I try to not be happy at their misfortune, right? This is a bad thing for them, and nobody likes losing a job or anything. But what I do worry about is okay, is their replacement going to be an improvement or not? Or could it possibly be someone even worse, you know? And the reason I'm saying, bringing this up right now is that a lot of people think the interim attorney general that we have since uh, Pam Bondi got canned is Todd Blanche. And a lot of people know Todd Blanche as Donald Trump's former private attorney and as the person who went and did that interview and talked to Ghislaine Maxwell while she was in the one prison in and then he moved her into a lower security prison. That a lot of people are upset about that because getting to super low security is not very typical about people who have been convicted of sex crimes like sex trafficking and all that. So anyway, a lot of people pissed off about that and thinking that maybe Todd Blanche might be even worse. All I have to say about that is I'm kind of glad that he is just given the role of interim attorney general. This tells me that hopefully it's a very temporary thing and we'll find somebody better. So that would be cool. So anyway, putting politics aside for a minute, I want to mention the holiday that happened on Tuesday, which I mentioned a little earlier. Tuesday, just like March 31st every year since 2009. Uh, was International Transgender Day of Visibility. And yeah, I made the little short on this channel just to, in my own little way, my own small way, help spread the word for anybody who didn't know that there was a Transgender Day of Visibility or what it's about. And of course, it's all about celebrating the lives and joy and successes of transgender people and their contributions to society, as well as raising awareness of the discrimination that the transgender face in society, very sadly. And so that's good. I just did that little short to help spread the message a little lot. And again, it was started in 2009. So this has been a holiday. Well, this year was the 17th anniversary, and therefore the 18th time we have celebrated this. And it's not just an American holiday, it's known as an international holiday, so we're not the only ones doing this. And it was started again in 2009 by Rachel Crandall Crocker, um, an author, and it gets spearheaded every year by a US based youth advocacy group known as Trans Student Educational Resources. So there's an educational component to this as well. So that again, I say once again, happy Transgender Day of Visibility, related now since that was on Tuesday. And what I thought was so fitting for LGBTQ plus culture um, was that a Supreme Court decision came down on that day, and they were made a decision, a ruling on a Colorado law. Well, it's related to the Colorado law that bans conversion therapy for LGBTQ youth, and I was kind of surprised to see this extremely conservative Supreme Court seem to be siding um, against the ban on conversion therapy, although they didn't strike down the law entirely. But they did side with the woman who started a lawsuit. I think a couple years ago, the lawsuit was started, and they sided with her, and she's a licensed counselor in Colorado. And she was arguing that the law itself violated her First Amendment rights. Again, she's a licensed therapist, and so she does talk therapy. And, excuse me. And so her argument was that, sorry, I'm readjusting the microphone here. I didn't want to cough in your ears. And so she's really, yeah, I look like a gay Jay Leno. Thank you very much. I am gay, but I don't think I look much like Jay Leno, except all the gray hair, of course. Anyway, and so I was kind of surprised to see the super conservative Supreme Court decide with this therapist, saying that this ban on conversion therapy in Colorado is limiting her is violating her First Amendment rights, because when they're doing talk therapy, this law would have banned therapists from talking to minor patients about their sexual orientation or their gender identity. And all this was in the goal of protecting minors from conversion therapy, right? But she's all like, hey, talk therapy, First Amendment applies and all that. And apparently the Supreme Court sided with her. And they didn't really, they didn't really abolish that law, destroy the Colorado ban on conversion therapy, but they did end up sending the case back to a lower court. And why is that? to investigate whether they applied the right test, the right standard, to see if the law was constitutional or not. Because again, there was a good First Amendment argument made in front of the court, and the lead opinion was written by Justice Neil Gorsuch. And again, I have another quotation, and I quote, he said, I quote, Colorado may regard its policy as essential to public health and safety, but the First Amendment stands as a shield against any effort to enforce orthodoxy in thought or speech in this country. So they really did buy her First Amendment argument. And again, so this ruling kind of sent the case back to the lower court to weigh in on whether the law is unconstitutional, as in, does it violate the First Amendment? And so it's about, did they apply the correct standard the first time when they ruled it legal? And so we don't know the impact of that yet. We don't know the outcome of the lower court's future decision yet. But this could have an impact, not just in Colorado, but did you know there's like about 24 states that have bans on conversion therapy, and these bans are not on conversion therapy for minors, that is. And these bans are not identical, but they do. If Colorado has to amend or eliminate this law because it's determined unconstitutional, that would have implications for laws in other states like New York, or all of New England, or New Jersey, or Pennsylvania, or pretty much the whole West Coast, and plenty of others. Again, there's a couple dozen states with these bans. And yeah, that could have some big implications. But I'm so glad that if the Supreme Court was going to decide this way, I'm so glad it just so happened to happen on Transgender Day of Visibility, because that's good news for the transgender community, I guess. And yeah, so there you go. That's what I had to say about this case and whatnot. And so now we've already gone over the two holidays I wanted to talk about, as well as President Trump's address to the nation on Wednesday night, and the firing of Pam Bondi. And it's funny, like I said, this came right after the firing of Kristi Noem, the former director of Homeland Security. And that wasn't the end of her being in the news for big stories. I'm sure you've heard about the scandal involving her husband, right? And I'm not going to go into that because, well, A, I'm a little bit uninformed on that issue, and B, I don't think that just because it's good tabloid news that it's that it's really necessarily worth reporting on. So I'm not going to really touch that one all that much. And let me see what else I got here for you all. I do have more notes than I usually do for my live streams, but again, I wanted to get all these facts right and any quotations there. And oh yeah, AI. That's one big thing culturally going on, and technologically, of course. And the thing is, lately, I mean, AI has now been pretty much forcibly integrated into medicine and education and many, many other things. Everybody's using a little AI here and there, especially in the sciences. And there was a bill introduced recently. I think it was about 9 days ago or so, by Bernie Sanders and AOC, in the Senate and the House, respectively, right? And It's called the Artificial Intelligence Data Center Moratorium Act. So a memoriam is not a forever death, but it's at least a pause until the moratorium is lifted. Sorry, yeah, I meant moratorium if I said memoriam accidentally. Sorry about that. And so, what their goal is to this bill would, if it goes into law, it would pretty much pause the construction of new AI data centers, large scale ones anyway, until the federal safety standards are implemented to address energy, water, and labor concerns, among other things. So it's not going after already existing AI data centers. Okay, it's going pretty much just putting a pause on the permitting and construction of new uh, new large scale AI data centers that exceed specific power regulations, right? Power thresholds anyway, power consumption thresholds, because these things they consume a lot of power, and that ends up becoming a consumer issue for the states that these data centers are in, of course, because the rest of us have our power bills get jacked up to help pay for all the electricity consumption going on. Anyway, and so the conditions for lifting the moratorium, right? I wanted to at least put some of that in there. The conditions for lifting the moratorium would be um, well, it remains in place until the Congress passes comprehensive legislation that would include comprehensive federal AI safety legislation that addresses the environmental impacts and the worker protection and potential job displacement issues, and as well as privacy, civil rights, and community impacts like consumer rights and the cost of utility bills, like I mentioned there a little bit. And so, what I see from what I heard Bernie and AOC doing a little address live the other day about this, and it looks like this bill is driven by concerns over the high power and water consumption of AI data centers, which is straining local power grids, and it's increasing utility costs for consumers because a lot of these AI data centers, these companies, they're getting big breaks on the amount of money they got to pay for this electricity, which means the power companies are often jacking up the rates for other people so they can still meet their bottom line, still get their profits and all that. And so I think that's kind of interesting that they're trying to put a pause on this, just at least for long enough to get some protections for all the citizens involved that are being impacted by it. I mean, because in New York State alone, the utility rates have gone up, and this was in part due to the tariffs and due to, I think, the provinces of Ontario and Quebec both imposed reciprocal tariffs against the US when we put tariffs on Canada. And in New York State, we get a lot of our power from Canada. A lot of our power from example, hydroelectric power, hydropower from Quebec, and a bit from Ontario. So I know some of the states, some of the northeastern states right along the borders are the ones most impacted with the utility raises as a result of those two provinces saying, "Hey, we're going to reciprocally tariff you guys." And then on top of that, we've got New York State. Again, I'm in New York State, and we're actually giving tax breaks to these companies who are putting in AI data centers and all that. And that makes me worry that um, Governor Hochul is giving away money for these companies that, yeah, there's some jobs involved in the construction of these AI data centers, but not a lot of human being jobs to be had there, right? And so, yeah, I don't know. It's not good. So I'm glad that they're at least proposing this act to do this, to put a pause on the construction of these things until like they can find a way to protect all the citizens, all the people here. But I'm thinking the bill is probably going to have a really hard time passing in Congress. It's probably got a lot of headwinds to deal with. Um, and that's because, in part, because the White House has urged Congress to streamline the process for permitting for AI infrastructure, which means the White House is emphasizing a need for faster development in AI infrastructure. And if the Congress passed this bill into law, that would seriously slow down the development of AI infrastructure. So yeah, I'm thinking this one is going to have a pretty hard time passing in Congress, but I'm kind of glad yeah, they have it out there. And let me see if there's anything I missed. I prepared a whole bunch of different topics for you all, and no, I don't think I missed anything. I think I have said everything that I wanted to make sure I didn't forget. Anyway, again, this is now 2 years of Language, Culture, and Dr. Lou. This channel's been around for 2 years, and I do plan to keep it going. And anyone who's not subscribed to the channel yet, please do consider subscribing if talks about language and culture or something that might interest you, because that's pretty much all we do here. And I do try not to get too political too often because, again, I don't like the hurtful comments that also come with talking about anything about politics. And I'm a linguist, so I'd rather be talking about language and culture anyway. Um, but yeah, so if you haven't subscribed that, please do consider subscribing, and please do give a like to this video. Please do drop a thumbs up if you have not done so yet. It really helps it push it through the YouTube algorithm and all that. So yeah, that's yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I had to say about that. I guess if anybody wants to comment on anything related to cultural goings on this week, cultural happenings this week, please add it to the live chat. I would be happy to address it, talk about it, and all that. And yeah, I'm not seeing any incredibly on topic comments about that here. There might be one here from just a couple minutes ago, maybe. Well, some people go outside their areas of expertise and assume that their knowledge extends beyond their field, but you you're pretty spot on with the political analysis. Well, thank you, Henry. I'm not a political scientist, but I do follow politics. One would not call me a political junkie. I'm not always talking politics or always consuming political commentary and whatnot. But I do actually consume a little bit of that every day. But that's because it's hard to really track everything going on culturally without looking at what's going on in politics. So that's my interest, is more in the cultural aspects, like how will these changing in laws affect our culture, and how is our culture impacting the way people are voting and all that. All that is very fascinating to me, but I'm yeah, I'm not an expert on on politics, but I do, of course, like anybody, I have my opinions. Like they say, opinions are like assholes. Everybody's got them, right? And anyway, I'm trying to think of if there's. Mm, do you know Skibidi toilet? That's kind of funny. Um, and no, I'm not really knowledgeable about that. I mean, I know what is Skibidi and all that, but not very knowledgeable about how that connects to the toilet. Anyway, um, unless you would like to enlighten us, maybe let us know in the chat what it's all about. But I don't have a whole lot of what I would consider useful knowledge on that. And yeah, and I don't know. I mean, what comes to mind when I hear Skibidi is um, oh, what's that thing? 6 7, right? That's one thing. But because when in language we define skibidi as something that doesn't necessarily mean anything necessarily, but it marks you as a member of a group, someone who's a part of the in crowd with something, and that's why, and that's part of how 6 7 got voted one of the words of the year from multiple dictionaries for 2025. Actually, it seems to be a pretty yeah, pretty big fad and pretty good marker of being member of the youth culture right now. Um, but yeah, anyway, I don't really know much about what that has to do with the toilet. Anyway, but yeah. So since I have no more real topics that I have prepared a lot of notes on or a lot of knowledge on, and no, I do not know Poppy Playtime. What is that all about? Huh? No, I don't. But let's see. Maybe I could look something up if anybody wants to learn about it. But no, I hate talking about things that I haven't really researched myself and done a little background on. Um, uh, and hi there too. Um, oh well. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, no, I'm not finding anything. Oh, let me see if there's anything. That's weird. Totally bizarre. Sorry, I was gonna look something up, but my laptop is playing. Well, it's going all wonky on me. We'll see if that um isn't anything. I'm just looking up what the hell is Poppy Playtime. Oh, it's a survival game. That totally explains why I wouldn't really know it. Um, oh, Poppy Playtime. Mob Entertainment. That's kind of funny. Um, so it's an episodic puzzle survival horror video game, apparently. Yeah, that explains why I wouldn't know it. I really don't play video games. I haven't in many years. Because I am getting old, and I guess that's part of the explanation to why I haven't played video games in years, but also um, because, well, I find other ways to entertain myself anyway. Um, and no, of course, I don't know the Chum Chumpkins from Poppy Playtime because I don't know that game. Again, not really all that interested in learning more about a video game because I'm not really looking to change my routine because as far as I can tell from when I used to play video games a little bit, ends up passing so many hours go by, taking up so much time in the day, and then I find out I haven't done anything productive all day because I've been playing video games. So that was, I guess, partially a personal decision to leave those behind. Anyway, but yeah. So so again, since I don't really think I'm adding much more to the discussion, adding much more cultural stuff for the last few minutes anyway. I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up, and I want to say thank you. Before I do, I wanted to say thank you to everybody for hanging out with me for a little bit. And again, if you're not subscribed to the channel, please do consider subscribing, because language and culture is all we do, and I promise we we don't do much politics. The number of videos I've done regarding politics are in the single digits, less than 10. And that's over, I have, how many videos are still publicly available? 205 on my channel. So out of 205 videos, less than 10 have to do with politics, and that's kind of on purpose because I don't really like the hurtful comments that come the way of anybody expressing their political opinion on social media anyway. And so I'd rather stick to doing more language and culture. And I will, my next video is going to be, well, first I will do one short. My next long form video will be lots about language. It will be a linguistic topic. So if you want to check it out, probably one good way to be notified and to know it's coming is make sure you're subscribed to the channel. And there you go. So again, thank you so much for hanging out with me. And I was so happy to get a lot of this off my chest and whatnot. And yeah, so I will catch you around next time. Bye bye.